Hi, good morning. It's Daryl here. Happy Monday. It's coming up on 5 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. And I want to talk about a saying, a motto, a phrase that I've heard over and over about civilizations, civilizations not being judged on their might or on their conquering. They're judged a lot of times on how they cared for the weakest people of their population, how they cared for their weakest members. And this brings me to school lunches and the controversy over people, debt, parents racking up debt, non-payment, and how that's been dealt with lately. Reading up, there's in Pennsylvania, a school district caught a lot of flack for sending out notices to parents that were running up a debt, whose kids were running up a debt, saying you could lose your kids uh, to foster care. Your kids are going to end up in foster care if you don't pay your school debt. In other words, we're going to take away your kids because you're poor. You're going to be punished because maybe because you lost your job or you got laid off, whatever it is. But that's basically what they're saying. They caught a lot of flack for it, and they backed up off their stance on this. They're basically saying that, well, because apparently you can't provide an adequate lunch or breakfast for your children, and therefore you should not have them. Something along those lines. Um, it's just it brings me back to Trump and this hardline mentality of punishing people for being poor. Um, and in Rhode Island, Warwick, I believe, there was one school district that these policies didn't stand for long because all these school districts caught a lot of flack for this nonsense. Um, One school district took away for the kids that couldn't keep up on lunch school debt on their payments. They didn't get hot lunches. They were given I think it was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich instead of hot lunches. Let me tell you guys briefly. I try not to talk too much about my own private life, but uh, I came from a good family. My father was a hard worker his whole life. He had two jobs. He was the head ranger of a state park. He ran a whole crew. We lived in the state house in the state inside the park. He was the boss, the park ranger. He was also a forest firefighter. Um, and he worked a couple other jobs just to provide the best life for his family. My mother is a great mother, a great family. At 9 years old, my father, all of a sudden, within 6 months, he was dead from brain cancer. And uh, it quickly became evident that I was going to have to go on reduced lunches because my mother just on I think it was Social Security until she could get some type of schooling and training and get into a job and figure it all out because she had me. I was 9 years old and my sister was 3 years old at the time this happened. So it wasn't going to be too easy for her to get a job and provide for the family. So there was a period uh, where I had to get reduced lunches, and it was an embarrassment. It was embarrassing because I knew how kids looked at those kids, and now I was one. And this is just the point. This isn't due to any. This isn't due to drugs. It isn't due to laziness. And if it could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. It's a terrible thing. I can't imagine if back then my mother got a threatening note saying that they were going to take me away from my mother. Now, after my father just died, that they're going to take me away because my mother can't pay $1 for lunch. Oh my God, that would have messed me up for life. Or if they gave me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because my father died instead of a hot lunch. Can you imagine how a kid would feel? Through no fault of his own, through no fault of his parents. My father didn't ask for brain cancer. He didn't do anything that make him deserve brain cancer. And like I said, he's one of billions of people or millions across this country that didn't ask for this stuff. This is the purpose of these safety nets. I think Trump supporters, Republicans, conservatives, have very little compassion, very little empathy for other people. If it does not affect them, then screw it. Those people there must be something wrong with them. They're lazy. Or they must be foreigners or something, because if I can make ends meet, anybody can. Life doesn't always go as we plan it, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of conservatives, a lot of Republicans out there that felt this way, but don't anymore, because this stuff's happened to them. It happens to everybody. Eventually it'll happen to, it's just a matter of time, and worse things will happen. But it's just such a lack of empathy and compassion for other people. Greed, self-centeredness. The way these people complain about taxes, or why should I pay for school? Like I pay taxes. I pay income tax, car tax, all the taxes. I don't have any kids. I don't complain. I would never complain about that. Educating the population is a good thing. I don't mind putting money towards it. I would rather put money towards it than have an ignorant population of people that elect reality TV show stars because they're not that intelligent. But back when I was a kid, these school lunches were only $1. This is when this happened in 75, 76. I don't know what they are now, but it's a small amount of money. I have to say, along with this though too, as I'm looking up all these stories, there's actually good stories out there. There's stories of anonymous people going into these schools and paying for all the kids. There's a story about a secret Santa coming in and paying for all the debt of all the children. Now that's a good man, and that's a Christian. Going and talking on that subject, a lot of these people, like with Trump and his prayer breakfast the other day, they all claim to be good Christians. And good Christians do not deny kids a hot meal, because their parents are going through a tough time, or their parents going, you don't do that, man. And I shouldn't even have to tell them that they don't, it's wrong. Just such a lack of empathy and compassion. It's troubling. But my point here was, I know what it's like, because I was one of those kids that had to reduce. I think eventually it was even a free lunch, because we tried as best we could to get my mother to get a job somehow and all that. So we went to reduced lunches, and then I think I did get free lunches for a while. It was embarrassing. It was not something I wanted. And I knew that it was because of the stigma of being poor. And I just, like I said, I can't imagine that I had to suffer through that, through no fault of mine, through no fault of my family. And not only that, but then if a school district like Pennsylvania had then turned around and threatened my mother with taking me and my sister away from her, simply because my father died of brain cancer, and now we can't afford lunch, and now the state's going to take me away from my mother, my only surviving parent. Yeah, that's a great government you got there. Like I said, this is scary things. We're moving towards fascism and totalitarianism, and just a total lack of empathy, and the greed. How much money could this cost? And yet we have a billionaire president with gold toilets. True fact. Gold toilets in his penthouse, and kids can't pay their school lunches, are being threatened to take away from their parents. Meanwhile, our own president golfs every other day and has gold toilets. What's wrong with this picture? Seriously, what is wrong with this picture? All right, you guys have a good Monday.